Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? Please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from, where you are watching from, what city, what state, what county, what town, what end of the galaxy you are located in, so I can shout you all out. We're live streaming right now on YouTube, on Rumble, on Odyssey, on Rockfin, all at the same time, so that you can, for your viewing pleasure, so that you can make sure that you have a backup stream just in case. So we've got people tuning in here from Antarctica, very funny, but cool. Munich, Egypt, Pakistan, Madrid, from Palestine, Tel Aviv. I fixed that for you. So we've got Tunisia, we've got Canada, Switzerland, Russia, Greece, North Korea. I'm about to talk about North Korea, actually. Slovakia, Texas, Colorado, Russia. Ramsey's watching from the Canadian Parliament. I'm also going to talk about that too. We have some funny clips from the Canadian Parliament. So Netherlands, Qatar, again, Texas, Southern Carolina, the U.S., Seattle, Barcelona, and the Netherlands again, Orange County. Let's dive right in actually to North Korea. I think we'll start with North Korea because I want to get to France in a second. Okay, so hold on. Give me a second. Can you guys see that? So, Kim Jong Un went to visit Vladimir Putin, okay? So, let me show you a little bit about how the mainstream media covered this. It's quite nauseating, as you can imagine. But first, some clips.
Очень радостно. Тем более, что такие события вот были. 75 лет образования республики, 70-летие победы в Великой войне за освобождение, 75 лет восстановления дипотношений. У нас столько событий. Наш новый космодром, который мы... Да.
Now we get Kim Jong Un's. So you just heard Putin talk about the Korea War, right? Between North and South. I mean, South Korea is basically like a giant U.S. base. The money that was Iran's, that was stolen from Iran, was in was in South Korea, right? Because the Americans, they control Japan, Germany, South Korea so much that they're able to influence these sorts of decisions. So they stole Iran's money. And now they put it in Qatar, and I covered the prisoner swap, so you can watch that video if you'd like. Here's Kim Jong Un's opinion about the Ukraine war now. Take a look.
자기 주권적 권리와 또 안전 이익과 이걸 수호하기 위해서 정의의 위협을 벌이고 있는데 우리는 시정일관 러시아 정부 그 당시께서 취하시는 모든 조치에 전적인 무조건적인 지지를 표명해 왔고 앞으로도 언제나 반전 사주 전선에서 언제나 러시아와 함께 있을 것임을 다시 이 기회를 빌어서 확언하는 바입니다.
The anti-imperialist front, as he mentioned. I always think it's when they say that it's dangerous for North Korea to have a nuclear weapon. Well, I think the reason that they developed one in the first place is because of the Korea War, and specifically the fact that the Americans killed 20% of Korea's population. 20%. 1/5. I mean, can you imagine if someone killed 1/5 of the United States population, what do you think the United States reaction would be to that? You know, so to make it sound like, oh, well, he just wants nuclear weapons because, you know, he's aggressive. No, on the contrary, it's deterrence in this case. Absolutely deterrence, right? Whereas the United States is the only country in history that has used nuclear weapons, and the only times that it used them, or rather the only 2 times it used them, were against civilian populations and to send a message to the Russians. So you want to talk about aggressive use of nuclear weapons? Well, that's a good example. Now here is here's Kirby. Let's look at what our old friend Kirby had to say.
Well, we're watching this very, very closely. We'll see what
he's watching very closely, huh? The teacher is not happy.
The 2 sides say as a result of this. As I've said before, we continue to urge North Korea to meet its public commitments not to support Russia's war in Ukraine. No nation on the planet, nobody, should be helping Mr. Putin kill innocent Ukrainians. And if they decide to move forward with some sort of arms deal, well, obviously we'll take the measure of that, and we'll deal with it appropriately. As Jake Sullivan said last week, there will certainly be repercussions for North Korea, both from the United States and from the international community. As for what either side will get out of this, I think we have to watch and see what actually comes out of this discussion.
So what are either side getting out of this? I mean, if you look at the video I just showed you where they're speaking, you can see in the background you've got several satellites, right? You see where my cursor is? You've got one here, another in the right corner. There's a rocket here. So, you know, they had a 5-hour meeting, Kim Jong Un and Putin, and I mean, what North Korea wants is specifically ballistic missile technology, whether it's for, you know, building a spy satellite or furthering their nuclear program. I think it's both. These technologies are very, very, very similar, right? You need the same kind of technology to fire a ballistic cruise missile, just as you do to have a space program or a spy satellite, right? So Russia is willing to give that technology in certain amounts in exchange for what? For artillery shells. This whole war is being fought with artillery shells and drones. And Russia has more artillery shells than Ukraine and better drones than Ukraine. So we go back to what you saw in the press like last year, where they're making fun of Putin. They're making fun of North Korea. They're saying, oh, haha, look, Putin is buying artillery shells from North Korea. Putin is getting drones from Iran. Oh, he's so desperate. Look at Putin. Look at Russia. They have no chips left. They have to import microwaves and you know, dishwashers to steal chips just so they can build drones. You know, they just make up these fantastic tales. When this is actually, it's the complete opposite. Because as soon as the Iranian drones started appearing on the battlefield, then it's no longer, oh, look, these Iranian drones are so crap. No, it's, oh my God, they're devastating. Look at the damage that you're doing. So how can both of these things be true at the same time? How can these drones be so bad and Putin is desperate that he has to go and buy these crappy drones, and then at the same time these drones are lethal and killing people and causing damage on the battlefield? Which one is it? It's both, apparently, at the same time. It's both. You're supposed to buy into both strands and strains of propaganda. And so the other thing was that, oh, he's buying artillery shells from North Korea. You idiot. You'd be lucky. You would be lucky. You should be so lucky as to have so many artillery shells as Russia. Do you want to know what is happening here, man? A few months ago, and I did many videos on this, a Ukrainian defense official was saying that the Russians are firing between 40,000 to 60,000 artillery shells a month. No, actually, let me give you one better. Look at this Western official here, what he's saying. He's saying that Russia fired 10 to 11 million rounds last year in Ukraine. Do you know what kinds of... This is basically World War I. This is basically World War I. You've got people in trenches blowing each other up with artillery. And of course there are drones hovering overhead, which instead of Zeppelins, right? This is madness. This is absolutely mad. And so now the truth comes out, right? This is Reuters. I'm reporting this. This is 10 to 11 million shells in the last year alone. That is absolutely colossal. That is madness. That is madness. And the United States, their main manufacturing plant for these 155 millimeter shells is located in Scranton, in Pennsylvania, where the office is. A different type of office, right? And so they're upgrading it. They just received billions, you know, to upgrade it. And they're still not going to catch up to Russia. They still won't catch up to Russia in 10 years. Okay? So whether you want to take the Ukrainian official or you want to take the Western official who's speaking anonymously, it doesn't really matter. You know, whether it's 40,000 shells a day or it's 10 to 11 million shells in 2022, which would be around 27,000 shells a day. It doesn't matter. These amounts of artillery are ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And so it matters very, very much that Putin is getting artillery shells from Korea. It is everything. It is everything. Artillery shells are everything. And so look at these hyenas. They're just hyenas. They're sitting there like morons, laughing and giggling like hyenas because they think that, oh, North Korea is so primitive. Oh, this technology is so primitive. Yeah, and it's winning the war. They're winning the war with this quote-unquote primitive technology. So who's laughing now? Take a look. Take a look at this
that is desperate and has plenty of stockpiles of that ammunition and some of that weaponry, because of course North Korea for many, many years was supported by the Soviet Union, and so has a lot of that technology, or I should say that weaponry, that Moscow might need right now to prolong that conflict.
John, what exactly does Putin need? How much pressure is Russia's defense ministry and industry under right now?
Well, you know, there's reporting that they have expended as many as, 12 to 15 million artillery shells so far in this war.
How much? How much did you say? How many artillery shells?
And billion. There's reporting that they have expended as many as, 12 to 15 million.
So now you've got three people I just gave you saying approximately the same, 20 to 40 to 60,000 artillery shells a day. And he still goes on to make fun of them, which is bewildering, absolutely bewildering to me.
Artillery shells so far in this war. And they haven't actually pushed forward at all during that time. And so I think they're running low on some stocks. They know that the North Koreans have Soviet and Russian capable kind of bullets, artillery shells, and rockets and things that the Russians can use. And so in a sense, it's two things. It's a signal that Putin's, maybe digging in for the long term here. And it's also a signal that they're sort of running low on things. They need some help from North Korea.
And do you agree, John, with Jean, who uses the word desperation for Putin? Is this a new low for him?
Yes, it's a signal he's
a new low
in for the long term. But
oh man, look how stupid this guy is. He's buying the weapon that is winning him the war. He's so low. He's so desperate. Oh no.
He's got no choice. He's been unable to really change things on the battlefield. And so he's turning to North Korea. Like, listen, North Korea has the GDP of something like $18 billion a year. We've provided more assistance than that to Ukraine during this time. He had to travel in an armored train because North Korea doesn't have any aircraft that are suitable or safe enough. And so, yes, Vladimir Putin is going to gain maybe some new shells, or actually many of these shells are aging and probably duds and such, but he's doing what he has to do. He's scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
So you see this level of reporting. Here's something even funnier. Look what they were saying in the beginning of the report, like, oh God.
Russia carrying the supreme leader. Up against a NATO-supplied Ukrainian counteroffensive, Russian forces need more guns and ammunition, even the old Soviet kind. And while 42% of North Koreans can't get enough food, the government maintains a large stockpile of these artillery shells and rockets.
Yeah, because you killed 1/5 of their population. I would also maintain a large stockpile of weapons and build nuclear weapons if you did that to me. It's so funny because right now people in the West, the electricity, you know, the electricity bills have gone up, gas gone up, price of food gone up everywhere, every single country. Pick one: Germany, UK, United States. Everything is more expensive. Everyone is complaining and on edge. And now you're going to come here and tell me, oh, the poor North Koreans, look what their leader, their supreme leader is doing to them, depriving them of food. 42% of Koreans have no food. They've never even heard of food. They don't know what food is. Those poor souls, look how backwards they are. Look how primitive they are. We would never do that in the West. In the West, everything is plentiful. Right? Fruit and food is bountiful and plentiful and omnipresent, and everyone is just, you know, drinking out of gold crystal cups. What the fuck is this? You're going to sit there and tell me like all this money they're giving Ukraine, these hundreds of billions, God knows how much they've actually really given Ukraine. Then they've been giving them since 2014. That's not impacting how people eat in the West. That's not causing more poverty in the West. Think how much they could have built with that money, how much infrastructure they could have built in the West with that money that they've given Ukraine. Think how much, you know, people will be doing better, how much their lives will be doing better. You see, this is just propaganda. This is crap. And then they want to sit there and tell you that actually it's in North Korea where the TV is propagandized, right? Where the TV is nothing but lies. No, it's this. It's what I just showed you. It's PBS NewsHour. That is the best level of propaganda. No one does propaganda better than mainstream media. Western mainstream media. They invented propaganda. They are the best. They're chefs at propaganda. North Korea look like amateurs next to PBS NewsHour. They truly do. They truly do. So, in any case, if you want to look at it this way, look at how Russia getting drones from Iran impacted the war. It swung the war in Russia's favor. Does that mean Russia's going to win? Who the hell knows? We could all die tomorrow in a nuclear holocaust. I don't know. I hope not. But right now, that transaction, Iran supplying Russia with drones, or rather just simply the alliance that you know that has been crafted recently, not just with the global south, but you know specifically when we talk about Russia and Iran, and this expands in many theaters like Syria, for example. There's a strong you know military and economic relationship between Russia and Iran and China, and so look how the presence of the Shahed drones, the Iranian drones, on the Ukrainian battlefield swung the war in Russia's favor. So the artillery shells, I've given you the figures. We know for a fact, and it's not just the Russians. I didn't quote a single Russian. I only quoted Ukrainians and Western officials saying publicly that the Russians are firing millions of artillery shells a year. And they're winning the war because of that. Or at least they're holding on to the territory that they took because of that firepower, right? So actually the smartest thing, the only thing you should be doing if you're the Russian president is getting more artillery shells. And keep in mind, North Korea and I was about to say the Soviet Union and Russia, they have had this long-standing relationship since the Cold War, since the times of the Soviet Union, right? Those artillery shells, why do you think they work on Soviet systems? Because a lot of them come from the Soviet Union in the first place, right? So of course, North Korea and China, they build their own derivatives. You know, they have their own variations of many howitzers, but also of course even the AK-47, you name it, and they made their own variation of it. But nevertheless, you know, some systems stay standard. I don't know why the presenter, the narrator, was saying like, oh, you know, these are old aging methods of war. What do you mean? Yeah, that's the whole point. It hasn't changed in 100 years because it works. Blowing people up with artillery shells works. It's very lethal and it's very dangerous and it's very, very nasty stuff. It doesn't need to change. That's the whole bloody point. Because they want to make you think like, oh well, you need high-tech stuff to win the war in Ukraine, and you know that's how they justify the sale of all these weapons, right? Because what they're actually doing is they're using the war as a cover to give more money to the arms industry, right? Under the guise of, oh, we have to save Ukraine, we have to help Ukraine. Ukraine is democracy this and democracy that. And so they want to give Ukraine HIMARS, they want to give Ukraine all sorts of things like just for the sake of making money out of it, right? and posturing, so making it look like, oh well, we have the F-16s, you know, we have the M1A1s and the M1A2s, and we have the Bradleys, and we have the Leopards. Yeah, really? I'm about to talk about the M1A1s, by the way, the American tanks that have just arrived in Ukraine. Look at what happened to the German and the American, German and the yes, well, the Bradleys, yeah, the other ones. Look at what happened to them on the battlefield. Look at that. So much for high tech. In any case, this is a long-standing relationship. Korea, North Korea, they owe the Soviet Union, they owe Russia because of, you know, previous support, and so they're happy to help. It's not just about, oh, Kim wants to buy a new satellite. Ridiculous. They like to dumb things down so much. It's like a cartoon. It's not about that. It's not about that. Don't buy into that comic book crap. It's very, very simple. Artillery shells are winning the war in Ukraine, and Putin is getting more of them. Period. Whoever can build more artillery shells, or rather manufacture more artillery shells, is going to win this war. So let's move on to the next topic. I wanted to talk about the tanks before we get to France, Niger. Okay, so give me a second here, and I'll put this up on the screen for you. For those of you who've just joined, please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from, where you're watching from, what country you're in, so I can shout you guys out. And give me a second. You guys can see that? Okay, great. So give me a second and we'll keep going. This was a very good piece, by the way, the one I was just reading. I will read some excerpts for you because it was very, very, very you know, detailed and on the differences between the variants on the M1A1 and the M1A2. Very, very, very good. So let's take a look. The latest American tanks have just arrived in Ukraine. So we're talking about the Abrams tanks. Now, originally, the M1A2 Abrams were slated to arrive in Ukraine. So those are the latest version. Well, they're already quite old, right? Around 20, 30 years old, the M1A2 Abrams, right? So they gave Ukraine the M1A1, but depending on the version, you can actually get an M1A1 Abrams to be quite good and on par with the M1A2 V3. So let's take a look at this article from Newsweek. They said Ukraine's new Abrams tanks could be quickly destroyed by Russia. Aha. So I wanted to read some excerpts to you from this article. And, you know, I mean, in the media, they're making it sound like this is going to change everything for Ukraine. Right, so it's interesting to see a piece like this, which is saying actually the complete opposite. And if you remember, they hyped up the Bradleys and the Leopards and the Challenger. So the Challengers are, the Challenger 2 is British, the Bradley is also American, and then the Leopard 1 and 2 are German tanks. And so, guys, you remember that clip? There's a clip where the tanks are just on the battlefield. They're just laying there, smoking, and this drone picked up all the footage. Take a look. So that's what happened. That's what happened to the tanks. They did not fare too well. They did not fare too well, unfortunately. Here's another one. I mean, these are just like rows and columns of Bradleys and Leopards just sitting there. Because, you know, it doesn't matter what kind of tank you have. It really doesn't matter what kind of tank you have and how modern you think it is. You cannot just charge past a minefield, and not just minefield. Remember, you have these rows and rows and rows of defenses that the Russians have put up, where you've got dragon's teeth, which are basically these pyramids of just giant slabs of concrete that are pyramid shaped that they've placed in rows, like teeth, right? But they call them dragon's teeth because of how massive they are. Huge, huge obstacles that are meant to just physically impede a tank from, negotiating these obstacles or maneuvering past them. And then on top of that, even if you get past it, you've got these ditches that are dug so wide. They have bulldozers do the work. They're dug so wide that even if you somehow got there, you would fall right in and you just can't get back up. Because remember, if you have a small gap, a tank can drive over the gap. But if the gap is larger than the actual tank, you can't get it back up. And if it's deep enough as well, more importantly, right? And so you have the dragon's teeth, the tank ditches or tank traps. And then you have the actual mines, right? So you have anti-personnel mines, which are for people, and then you have mines that are put into the ground. Sometimes they're controlled by radio. Most of them are activated by weight. So just by driving over it, the wheels, right, which have the track wrapped around them, the track would just break, right, like a chain. It would just break. And Jesus, I mean, who wants to get out of that and repair it, if you can even repair it? And keep in mind, on top of that, you've got artillery in the trees. The Russians have rows and rows of howitzers. They have missiles. They can just throw whatever they want at you. So you're a sitting duck. This is the definition of a sitting duck. And I just showed you the videos and the results of what that looks like. So having M1A1 Abrams or M1A2 Abrams is not going to make a difference, right? It's just not going to make a difference. Now I will read to you from the article some of the things that they had mentioned, right? So they said that the U.S. government has pledged 31 M1 Abrams tanks to help in its fight against Russian forces. And Abrams tanks are already in Ukraine and coming to reinforce our brigades, Zelensky wrote on Telegram. And he said, I am grateful to our allies for fulfilling the agreements. We are looking for new contracts and expanding the geography of supply. So someone from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense said that, quote, they should be used in a very tailored way for very specific, well-crafted operations, because if they are used at the front line and just in a combined arms fight, they will not live very long on the battlefield. They need to be used in those breakthrough operations, but very well prepared. I mean, I don't know what that means. It's pretty vague, but, there are many versions of the M1A1 Abrams. You have the the SA and the FEP versions, and basically we don't know exactly which version they've given the Ukrainians. But if you upgrade them, they've got upgraded sights on some of the M1A1s. You can get it on par with an M1A2. But once again, I go back to my original point, which is that it doesn't matter how well the sights for the commander are in the tank. You cannot physically get past defenses like this, and the Russians have been dug in for almost a year now, right? This is just a simple fact of life that the Russians have very, very, very well prepared defenses. And yes, if you used a nuclear bomb, you could probably get past it, and we would all die. And yeah, but it's just not realistic, because the amount of firepower you would need to actually get through those defenses, if the Americans, let's say, wanted to do the work for the Ukrainians and use, their whole arsenal. Of course, they can break through these defenses. The technology exists, but there comes a point where you risk escalating too much, right? And then of course we enter a nuclear war, and this is it's not even worth talking about, because it's ridiculous. There's nothing good or tangible that will come out of that as a result. I mean, the whole world will be over within 30 minutes, truly within 30 minutes. And then you have a nuclear winter and no food. Actually, most people would perish from lack of food. So, I don't think this is going to make a big difference. I think the big difference here is just for the people making the tanks, right? Because when you want to give, for example, you want to give Ukraine military aid, it's not really, it's not aid. You have to look at it as profits for the arms industry. Now, one of the reasons they say that they gave the M1A1 is because if they had given the M1A2, they would have to be built from scratch. And if you look at the 3,500 tanks that the Americans have, they actually took from those to give to Ukraine with the USAI program, right? So here, you can look at this. This is an excellent piece, right? So the decision to transfer the M1A1 is understandable and was immediately chosen by Defense Express to be faster than the M1A2. The USA transfers tanks under the Program of Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which is the USAI. And so they were ordered from the manufacturer and not under the presidential drawdown program when the weapons go directly from the reserves of the armed forces. Okay? So once again, so irrespectively of whether you take them from the drawdown program or whether you order them directly from the manufacturer, at the end of the day, the company that builds the tanks or whatever weapon we're talking about, whether it's Raytheon or General Dynamics or Northrop, they're going to be refilling stocks. Okay, so if the Americans, they use the drawdown program, let's say time is not an issue, and they use the drawdown program and give it to the Ukrainians, they're going to want to refill those stocks. So they're going to order from the manufacturer. And when you go directly to the manufacturer, same thing. So the weapons industry, they make money at the end of the day, regardless. And is this going to change is this going to actually have an effect on the war? No, I don't think so. And it's ridiculous because they're laughing like hyenas about the prospect of Kim Jong Un going to Russia and handing over artillery shells in exchange for space technology or ballistic missile technology, whatever it is that he gets. They're laughing at the prospect of Putin getting artillery shells, when artillery shells actually make the biggest difference in the war, right? In terms of who's winning the war. It's artillery shells and drones. And like I said before, Russia have more artillery shells. They can produce more artillery shells. They are firing more artillery shells than Ukraine. And Russia have better drones than Ukraine. And both of these things come from Russia's production, but also from Iran and from North Korea. These things are winning the war. The decisive factors, artillery and drones. And then they laugh at this. They laugh at this on PBS NewsHour because they think they're geniuses. Then when it comes to the M1A1 or M1A2 Abrams or the Leopards or the Bradleys or the Challengers, who just end up as columns of smoking armored vehicles on the battlefield, then, they have nothing to say. But that's the result. That's what happens with Western tanks on the battlefield. So I wouldn't really get my hopes up if I were the Ukrainians. And no, I know Zelensky's now going to go ask for F-16s, like he's been doing for quite a while. As soon as he was promised tanks, then he started, like literally the same day, he started nagging for F-16s. You have to remember that if the Russians see any F-16 being used by the Ukrainians, they will consider this to be a nuclear threat, because for them, they're not going to wait and find out whether this F-16 is carrying a nuclear weapon or maybe it's that F-16. These jets are more than capable of carrying a nuclear payload. Of course, right? This is not a problem. You can have an F-16 deliver a nuclear bomb. So the Russians are not going to wait and find out whether one of these F-16s happens to be carrying a nuclear bomb or not. They are just going to treat it as a nuclear threat and act accordingly, meaning they might use nuclear weapons, meaning they might escalate to a level that causes us to use nuclear weapons. I don't know. No one wants to know and no one wants to find out, right? That's the whole point, except Zelensky, I suppose, and the people he represents, meaning the weapons industry. I really don't understand. I really don't understand how this is not clear in Western press. They just don't mention the issue of nuclear escalation, nuclear confrontation. They act like it's a non-issue, like this is like any other kind of war. It's not. It's really not. It's more than a proxy war. This is a hybrid war, and the ramifications, they're very, very big. And the risk of nuclear escalation is very, very big, and it's very, very present every single day, every single minute that this continues. So, I was reading and speaking, so forgive me, I didn't manage to see where you guys are tuning in from. Let me know in the comments again where you're tuning in from. We had a super chat from someone that I missed, so give me a second to read it to you before I continue, and then we shall proceed. And we'll talk about Niger and everything happening there. So Remember, if you want to support the show, you can donate on PayPal or Cash App or Venmo. If you have a comment or a question, do shoot. And this here was a super chat from Claude. Claude says, hi. Salut, hi from Quebec City in Canada. Salut à toi. Thank you, Claude. I appreciate it very much. And we had another donation here from Dapper. Says, hey, Richard, thank you for all the work you do. I can't always support you, but if you need any maps made, I will be honored to help. I love your work, bro. Keep it up. Hey, I love a good map. I really do. So I will get back to you, Dapper Dan. I appreciate that very much. Thanks for the kind words. And we also have Veronica, who just joined on Patreon. So thank you very much, Veronica. I owe you a crab dance, and I don't know what number we're at exactly now, but we should be. Hold on, I'll check in just a second. Actually, we have another one who just joined on Patreon. It's Adnan. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Give them a round of applause, and then I'm gonna throw down the crab dance. Let's go.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome.
Thank you.
والله انت كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro.
And then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large.
we got him.
Because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Disgusting!
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway. We'll do it live! Fuck it! Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Why attack Sanders?
Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it! I yield my time! Fuck you!
That ending is so gold. So golden and just pure gold. Thank you again, Veronica and Adnan. I appreciate it very much. That ending is so... I think I'm on... There's an echo. Okay, it should be fixed now. So listen, we've got how many patrons right now? My dear patrons, blessed are thee. We have 710 of you. So thank all of you for supporting my work. I appreciate it very much. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean it. So guys, look, we're 40 people away. I need to get to 750. Are you going to help me out? I think you are. You have what it takes. I believe in you. I know you can do it. I know we can do it. And we're just 40 people away. We just need to get to 750. So right now we've got 600, 700 people watching. And come on, guys. I want to make sure. I'm about to start with France Niger, but I want to make sure that by the end of the live stream, we've hit 750, and then I will unleash the new crab dance. And every time somebody joins, whether it's on YouTube or it's on Patreon, I will play a crab dance either way. So let's do it, guys. We want to get to 750. I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you. Now remember, you can stop anytime. You can start anytime. You can do any currency, any amount. It could be $1 a month or £1 a month or €2 a month. Whatever you like. Doesn't matter. You know, it goes towards supporting independent media, and if you find my work informative and you enjoyed it and you believe in the movement, then this is one of the ways to support. So thank you guys very much. And if you have any comments or questions or remarks, then please shoot them on PayPal or Cash App or YouTube or just in the comment section right now. So let's go. Let's go. Let's deal with France Niger, okay? Let's deal with France Niger because I've been waiting for this one. I've been waiting for this one. I knew it was coming. You know, the other day, we had this crappy news with MBS saying that, you know, he wants to normalize ties with Israel. Now that was a blow. That was a blow. But today we have beautiful news. We have beautiful news indeed. The prayers have been answered. The prayers have been answered. The French are finally waking up to reality and leaving Niger, where they are no longer wanted. Poof. Just like that. Here's Macron announcing it on TF1.
La France a décidé de ramener son ambassadeur. Et donc, dans les prochaines heures, notre ambassadeur, avec plusieurs diplomates, rentreront en France. Et nous mettons fin à notre coopération militaire avec les autorités de fait du Niger, car elles ne veulent plus lutter contre le terrorisme.
C'est donc la fin de la présence française militaire au Niger.
Elle sera organisée dans le temps, dans les semaines à venir, mais c'est la fin de cette coopération. Parce que nous ne sommes pas là pour participer à la vie politique, pour être les otages en quelque sorte de putschistes. Mais je vais être très clair. On le voit déjà aujourd'hui au Mali. Ils vont rentrer de manière ordonnée dans les semaines et les mois qui viennent. Et là, nous concerterons avec les putschistes parce que nous voulons que ça se fasse dans le calme.
Mais d'ici la fin de l'année.
Mais d'ici la fin de l'année. La France a décidé.
What do you mean? What do you mean, oh boy? You've been telling us for months, Monsieur le Président. You've been telling us for months. You have been insisting, yes? You have been insisting that you will not withdraw from Niger. You will not withdraw your French troops from Niger unless the deposed president, Mr. Bazoum, is reinstated. And yet now, you are saying that you're just going to leave. Wow. Look at Macron. He's leaving anyway. He said he won't leave, and now he's leaving anyway, looking like a fool with his tail tucked between his legs. Macron said, oh, he will not negotiate with les putschistes or the coup leaders, and yet now he has to. Macron, didn't he also refuse to recall his ambassador? Didn't it get to the point that the ambassador is trapped in the embassy with his family, hiding from the police because he is persona non grata, eating military rations? The poor boy. And now he's on his way home, finally. This person, this disgraced, expelled diplomat on his way home. And by the way, the final nail in the coffin, the final humiliation, which is just chef's kiss. The Nigerian government banned Air France and all French planes from using Niger's airspace. So you'll probably catch the French ambassador on his way home flying on Air Algérie. And even this threat from ECOWAS, remember with this August 6th deadline, turned out to be a giant bluff. So who is the clown now? Who is the clown now? Macron has made such a giant embarrassment of himself and his country. What a magical embarrassment, just a colossal shit show. He could have easily left 2 months ago with dignity if France had any left in Niger, but no. He had to do it his way and leave anyway 2 months later. Wouldn't it have been better to just leave immediately, you know, rather than trapping his soldiers in the base or bases, they have 3, or rather than trapping his diplomats there? I mean, not only does he have no respect for the people of Niger who have been protesting day and night, week in and week out in front of the French base, but he also lacks any respect for his own soldiers and diplomats. You know, France is supposed to be the country of etiquette, right? And French is supposed to be the language of diplomacy. What diplomacy? Look how he has tarnished his reputation and France's reputation by imposing himself on others, by imposing his country on others. He has dragged France's name through the mud and come out looking like a fool anyway, and Niger has come out on top. When is he going to get the message that Africa is done with French colonialism disguised as anti-terrorism or disguised as development aid? So let's look at the result. Kicked out of Mali, kicked out of Burkina Faso, kicked out of Niger, a coup in Gabon. These are all middle fingers. They are all huge rejections of France-Afrique, of French neocolonialism, and of French influence and control in Africa. You know, perhaps Macron was under the impression that the Americans would come and save him, but he clearly had another thing coming, especially when someone like Victoria Nuland swooped in like some vulture and tried to negotiate with the new government, because she obviously knew who is in charge. Now, let me ask you this. I'm just hypothesizing. Why should the Americans bother to save France when they can swing this situation and mold it to their own advantage? Perhaps many of you don't know this, but it's not just the French that have a military presence in Niger, it's also the United States. The United States has even more of an incentive when it comes to military matters, because the United States has 1,100 troops in Niger and a drone base, their largest in the world, which cost over $100 million just to build. The United States has not said a word to defend France's position in Niger. And this is its own humiliation, right? Where were your allies to come and save you? They don't care. As a matter of fact, here's a clip of Lloyd Austin. Look at what he had to say today.
When it comes to our force posture in Niger, we've not made any significant changes to our force posture. And as I have mentioned a number of times before, we really want to see a diplomatic solution evolve. We want to see a peaceful end to the crisis. And most important, we want to see preservation of Niger's diplomatically elected government.
I don't hear him saying we want to see the French staying in Niger. Far from it. So could it be that the Americans made a deal of sorts? That they won't stand in the way, right, of the French being kicked out in exchange for the United States being able to remain in Niger. Maybe, right? We're just hypothesizing, we're just speculating. So the deal here is that the Americans will abandon France politically in exchange. And that's that. That's that. What does that remind you of? It reminds you of AUKUS and the submarine deal. You remember how the Americans screwed the French out of this giant, this lucrative submarine deal with Australia. And all of this just to form AUKUS, right? So UK, Australia, and the US, which are basically, the same country. Five Eyes, right? Or three of the Five Eyes. The United States has no problem stabbing the French in the back. So who's to say that they haven't done the same here? You can kick the French out. We're not going to say anything, but we want to stay in Niger. Who knows? It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Regardless, at the end of the day, Macron embarrassed himself. He embarrassed his people and he embarrassed his country. And this is actually what real decolonization looks like. This is real decolonization because you're watching in real time how a so-called former, right? They're not a former colonizer, just straight up colonizer. You are seeing in real time a colonizer being kicked out of the colonized country. Just like that. You like it or you don't like it. You're getting out. Goodbye, au revoir. I'll show you here some of the people and what they had to say in Niger.
Il faut que les militaires français quittent immédiatement puisque vraiment on n'a pas besoin d'eux. On n'en a pas besoin d'eux. Il y avait des décennies, ils disent qu'ils nous aident, on n'a vu aucun changement, donc on ne veut pas de leur aide. On veut vraiment qu'ils quittent notre pays, qu'ils aillent chez eux, nous on va rester chez nous.
Je suis très content, très heureux aussi. Vraiment, les Français n'ont qu'à partir. C'est bon finalement, merci. Ils n'ont qu'à garder tout ce qu'ils ont, mais nous on n'a rien à voir avec eux encore. Merci. Et je ne veux pas que les militaires vont signer un contrat avec eux ou bien de négocier quelque chose. Non, on ne veut rien d'eux, ils n'ont qu'à rester chez eux. On va se débrouiller comme il le faut.
Here they are outside the base. Goodbye, goodbye. And here is the military order. Or, excuse me, rather just the directive saying that, all the French planes are banned. What a nail in the coffin. These are the 3 French bases, which I outlined to you guys the other week. 3 bases in Niger. Okay, so Niamey is the capital. That's where all the people are protesting. You can see here on the map Niamey is down there. Then there's another base at Walam and another one at Ayoru. The French forces the Americans, they relocated their forces. Remember, they basically repositioned them the other day and moved them outside the capital into their, in Agadez, to their giant drone base. But the French, they're leaving by the end of the year, and the ambassador is already gone. Well, if he can find a ticket. We'll see. I don't think any French flights will be leaving Niger at this time. What a fatal blow. Really, what a kick. What a kick in the ass. What a fatal blow. So embarrassing. So embarrassing. Oh my God. You know, there's something else we need to say about Niger. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this up for you. When it comes to Niger, did you guys notice that they were missing completely from the UN General Assembly? So for those of you who've been paying attention, who to this whole week of speeches where all the countries send their leaders to address the UNGA in New York, Niger was missing. Why do you think that is? Right now, the new government appointed a new foreign minister, okay, and he applied for credentials to go and address the UNGA, just like Lavrov, for example, who's the Russian foreign minister, went and addressed the UNGA. And they told him no. Keep in mind, this man is not only Niger's new foreign minister, he used to be Niger's ambassador to the UN. Okay, so of all people, I mean, there isn't anyone more qualified, nor is there anyone who has the credentials to go and address the UNGA as Niger's representative. He is the foreign minister. And yet they denied him his credentials. Why is that? Because the UN is clearly imposing and advancing the EU's agenda and France's agenda and even the United States agenda. Remember, the Americans are not necessarily saying that, we are happy with the situation, but if they have to deal with it, it's very clear that they are more than happy to step aside and let the French be kicked out and just, keep their heads down so they can stay in the country. And that's what's happening. Have you seen the junta, as they like to say, or the new government? Have you seen them say just once that we want the Americans out? No. Now, does that mean that they, personally, that they really want the Americans to say no? I think this is more of a question of them not being able to simply handle kicking out both the French and the Americans at the same time. So we'll see what happens in the future. But it's more important that they got the French out just for the sake, just because of the fact that France is the colonial power in Niger, right? Now, it doesn't mean the Americans aren't also, exercising or practicing their own version of colonialism in Africa, because they certainly are. But France especially, this relic, the stigma attached to having French troops owning Niger and French companies owning Niger, this has to go. Number one, there's no question about that. So they dealt with that. And you can see Macron, he's giving these hidden messages, isn't he? Right? He's saying these he has this double speak where he's saying that, if we leave Niger, and he said that they're leaving now, right, by the end of the year. So he says that if France leaves Niger, there will be no one left to fight terrorism, which is weird because the Americans are there supposedly, right, under the guise of fighting terrorism. Why does he say that? And another thing that he said that, in the last 2 months, so since the coup on July 26th, he says that in the last 2 months, you've had more people killed by jihadists in the Sahel than in the last 18 months. Is that an admission of guilt? I mean, I had my suspicions, I had my doubts, but when I hear that, it's like a mob boss who's sitting down and saying, like, you're not doing too well for yourself, are you, since I left, huh? You need to pay for protection, don't you? What does that mean? Is he saying that France has something to do with that? Because if you think for 1 second that it's beneath the French secret services, you have another thing coming. If you think for 1 second that they're different from the CIA, that they wouldn't do something like that just so Macron can go in front of a camera and say, you need us, look at what's happening to Africa. Oh, these jihadists are killing you without us. Clearly, you need us to protect you. You don't think that they would have something to do with that? I'm just speculating. But it's not unfounded speculation, is it? They're not different from the CIA. On the contrary, they work together. So don't think for 1 second that, it's beneath them or the French wouldn't do something like that just to advance and maintain their presence in Africa. Oh, on the fucking contrary. Especially out of all places you could pick on the planet, it's Niger. Out of all places, it's especially Niger. They need that uranium. They need to stay in the Sahel. Whatever excuse they bring out, doesn't matter. Whatever excuse they cook up, doesn't matter. Don't believe it. Don't believe it for 1 second. And so this is very disgusting that, they wouldn't even allow Niger to address the UNGA because it's not Bazoum. In what reality do they think Bazoum has any exercise of power? In what reality does Bazoum still, have any authority whatsoever? He is under house arrest. He is at home. He cannot do anything. He does not control one element of the Nigerian government. Not one element. Not one atom does he control. Have you seen anyone in Niger coming out to protest against the coup? On the contrary, people are they're jubilant. They're in the street, they're jubilating. They are begging the French to leave, and it worked. And it worked. What does that tell you? What does that say about Bazoum and, his expression of the people's will and what his authority looks like? It tells you that it's in line with the Quai d'Orsay, with the French Foreign Ministry. That's what it tells you. He's their guy. So of course they want him back. And that's why they had the UN exclude Niger from the UNGA, which is a very low move. Very low move. If there's anyone who represents the people of Niger right now, it's the new government who just managed to kick out the French. You see how people are happy. You see how every week for 2 months now, people have been protesting outside the base in Niamey, and they got what they wanted. We'll see next year if Niger is actually at the UNGA, and we'll see in the next weeks what happens with ECOWAS, this dud of an organization. Maybe they haven't lost their teeth, though. We'll see. But that was a giant bluff that they did on August 6th, right? They said there's a deadline. If you don't reinstate Bazoum, we're going to attack you. And nothing happened. They attack you with what army? Well, Nigeria has a sizable army. I won't lie. But, you just can't do this sort of thing. The mood in the region is very clear. They've kicked the French out of all these countries because they don't want the French anymore. Goodbye. They don't want you. They're sick of it. So it's time that, Macron, that ECOWAS, that everyone who represents their interests just, takes a hint, reads the room, sees what people are saying, which is goodbye, we don't want you. The whole region is saying it. It's not just Niger. Niger's the third country, and then you had Gabon on top of it having a coup against Bongo, who is another French stooge. Take a hint. Take a hint. Let's see, guys. What do we have here? We have Tony, who's just joined on Patreon. Thank you very much, Tony. I appreciate that. And we also, give me a second here. We also have a donation on PayPal. This one is from Johnny. Johnny says, cheers from Dublin. Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate that very much. And thank you to all of you for your donations and your kind words. And I'm going to play a crab dance now for Tony D. So thanks very much, Tony. Everybody give him a round of applause. Let's go.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard. Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome.
Thank you.
والله في كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro.
And then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s. A number 9 large.
we got him.
because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Get up.
Oh!
Disgusting!
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway. We'll do it live! Fuck it! Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Why attack Sanders? Why? Oh, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you!
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Again, you guys, thank you very much. Claudia has also just updated the sniffanometer, the Biden sniffanometer. So let me just give it to you. 7-Eleven. We're at 7-Eleven right now. We're trying to get to 750. I sound like I'm auctioning something off. So we're trying to get to 750, guys. Can I get 750? We need 39 more people. Come on, guys. I believe in you. Let's get to 750. Do it for Niger, okay? Do it to kick France. Let's do it, guys, okay? I believe in you. I have faith in you. I know you won't fail me. So something else that is outrageous I wanted to talk to you guys about, okay? Something else that is so outrageous. I'm sure some of you've heard what happened in the Canadian Parliament, right? So let's look at that. I mean, Jesus. I mean, I really don't know if I should be surprised anymore, but the Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation, literally a standing ovation for a Nazi. Not a neo-Nazi, no, a Ukrainian Nazi. Just look at this. This is the Speaker of the House.
Have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians.
Whoa, stop. Anytime you're talking about the Second World War and you say someone fought against the Russians, you should immediately have alarm bells ringing in your head. What do you mean he fought against the Russians in World War II? You mean he's a fucking Nazi? Yes, that's exactly what it means.
And continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
He's like, oh, wait till they find out. Wow.
His name is Yaroslav Hunka. And I was going to say he's in the gallery, but I think you beat me to that. But I'm very proud to say that he is from North Bay and from my riding of Nipissing Temiskaming.
Oh.
He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you.
No, you, the hell you don't. Jesus Christ, do you even... I feel like I should stop the whole segment right now. Like, what could I possibly say that needs to be said to break this down? Is this not? This is self-evident, the whole situation. No, but we have to keep going because this is outrageous. So this guy that they just applauded, the Nazi, the Ukrainian Nazi, not neo-Nazi, an actual Nazi, a Nazi. These are photos of him in World War II in the SS Galicia division. So this is the 14th division of the Waffen-SS. So the Waffen-SS, basically, so SS is a Schutzstaffel created by Heinrich Himmler and originally meant to supposed to be a bodyguard unit for Hitler. And then they expand the role of it with the Waffen-SS to do stuff like, just genocide or guarding concentration camps, Einsatzgruppen, going in and executing entire villages, just normal Nazi things. So these are photos of this scumbag that the Canadian Parliament just gave a standing ovation to, that they just called a hero, a Canadian and Ukrainian hero. Look at them. This is, in uniform. Jesus Christ. once again, do I need to explain this anymore? Turns out this is, you know, when Putin said that the West are supporting Nazis in Ukraine, I think this is what he meant. I think this is what he meant. And this is why you make the distinction that we're not talking about, you know, neo-Nazis, which would be bad enough. No, just, you know, actual Nazis like Banderites. So people who are adherents of Stepan Bandera, who is also in Ukraine looked at as a hero. Right? Who is also called a hero of Ukraine. They idolize these people. And this was common knowledge, this was public knowledge in the mainstream media up until the war in Ukraine started, right? Or rather exploded in 2022. But for the last decade, you can go at BBC or NBC, pick whatever channel you like, and they probably have articles. They most definitely have articles and reports about how Ukraine is packed with Nazis. Not neo-Nazis, Nazis. You know, we're not talking about like skinhead hooligans or something. No, the Banderites. And even in Canada, they had a monument to this guy's division, right? Look at this. This is from CBC, okay? So this is from 2021. This is before the war starts or rather explodes, right? The headline says, Jewish groups call for removal of vandalized Ukrainian World War II memorial. So they have this thing erected for the 14th Waffen-SS division in St. Michael's Cemetery. And you have the Wiesenthal Center, right, asking them to tear it down. So you can see that this is a problem that predates the war. But of course, right now, what does Trudeau do after this episode? Well, he lets the Speaker of the House take the fall. After all, he is the one who you know, ushered in the applause. But he also acts like, well, don't talk about this because it's an advantage that you give to Russia. You're advancing Russian propaganda by talking about this, by speaking about this. That's the takeaway from all this. Not that, oh, this is horrific that we actually applauded a Nazi, that we are on top of that supporting Nazis in Ukraine. No, it's not that. It's, oh, stop talking about this because now you're going to be doing Russian propaganda. Dude, it's not propaganda if it's true. What propaganda? You just basically confirm that what the Russians are saying is true and not propaganda. That's the takeaway from this. And you should be goddamn ashamed. I would resign. I would just bury my head in another galaxy if this shit happened. How disgusting. Because make no mistake, they apologize now. The Speaker of the House apologizes for this, but this is not the biggest problem. The problem is that they're arming you Nazis right now in Ukraine. Ones that are not 98 years old, but my age or your age, that are fighting age. They're giving them M1A2 Abrams, well, M1A1 variants. They're giving them Challenger tanks. They're giving them Bradleys. They're teaching them how to make bombs. They're clandestine bomb-making classes that were filmed on CNN that I showed to you. That is the big problem. That's the takeaway from this. It's not that you applauded a Nazi in the parliament. It's that you're applauding a Nazi in the parliament and you're arming Nazis in Ukraine. Just like this fuck. Here's Trudeau. Look at him try to wiggle his way out like some worm.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and by extension to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are celebrating commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue
Dude, what disinformation? Did you not applaud a Nazi? Are you not arming Nazis in Ukraine? How is this propaganda if it's demonstrably true, if you can verify it? It's not propaganda just because you want it to be.
Continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it.
So the Speaker of the House, not me, the Prime Minister, you know, who leads the country. The Speaker of the House has recognized his mistake. I played no part in this, even though I'm standing there and clapping myself. You know, the Speaker of the House recognizes his mistake in applauding and ushering the whole House to applaud for a Nazi. Oh, and by the way, that's Russian propaganda that there are Nazis in Ukraine, and we are giving Nazis in Ukraine more weapons now. So thank you, goodbye. Let me play you this clip. This is from actually, before I continue, I just want to say one thing, because he's saying that, you know, we apologize to Jewish communities. Why only Jewish communities? Did Canada not fight in World War II? Did the Canadians not land on D-Day in Normandy? Did the Canadians not fight in Caen? Did they not? Do you not have tons of veterans and veterans' families in Canada? You do. You do. You should apologize to them as well. You should apologize to anyone with a goddamn brain who can see what you're doing. You should apologize for arming Nazis in Ukraine now, not clapping for 98-year-old ones only, but on top of that, arming fighting age neo-Nazis and Nazis in Ukraine. You should apologize for that. It's not just, you're not just offending Jewish groups, you're offending anyone who has all five senses in working order, right? Let me play you this clip from Glenn Greenwald, and I'll read you the quote that he's about to mention. This is from the New York Times, right? And they're quoting this CIA Bellingcat. They say, quote, "What worries me in the Ukrainian context is that people in Ukraine who are in leadership positions, either they don't or they're not willing to acknowledge and understand how these Nazi symbols are viewed outside of Ukraine. I think Ukrainians need to increasingly realize that these images undermine support for the country." Yes, they should absolutely 150,000% undermine support for the country. Why should you support Nazis? Is that not a telltale sign, a red fucking flag that you should not support whatever is being done in this country? When Zelensky's posting pictures of the Ukrainian army on Telegram and then quickly deleting it a minute later because there are Nazi symbols in the background, when NATO are posting photos of Ukrainian women wearing Nazis patches and symbols and then deleting them because people notice, yes, that should absolutely undermine support for the country. Yes, 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 yes. They're not worried about supporting Nazis. Oh no, they're worried about this being used for Russian propaganda purposes. It's not propaganda. It's 100% true, and you're just making the case for the Russians. The Russians don't even need to open their mouths. They can just have you speak, and they're just admitting it. It's an admission of guilt that they are supporting Nazis.
Is undermine support.
This is a clip from Glenn Greenwald from his show System Update, and he's talking about this exact quote as well, and he nails it. Listen to what he has to say.
Shouldn't they undermine support for the country? Shouldn't the fact that the leading fighting forces in Ukraine are filled with Nazis and people who have allegiance to Nazi ideology? Again, when I say Nazi ideology, you have to be very careful, because in Western discourse, that phrase has been so overused. That Trump is a Nazi, that Trump is the new Hitler, that the Trump movement is fascist, that they're based on white supremacy, has been asserted over and over, that those words have lost their meaning.
This is an excellent point. Right? In Austria and Germany, where the Nazis actually came to power, right? And it was one country, remember, after the Anschluss. That is Nazism. When you look at this 98-year-old who they're applauding, that's a Nazi. Now, is Trump deplorable because of his foreign policy, because of Mike Pompeo? Yes, he absolutely. But he doesn't qualify as a Nazi. But in America, they because America is geographically and you know, mentally so far away from Europe, and especially not just Europe, but especially Austria and Germany, it's like these terms, they just don't have any. They've been diluted. You know, anyone you know like is a Nazi, this and that. They're overused to the point that they have no meaning anymore. It's a good point.
You call someone a Nazi now, and it pretty much means they're a conservative, or someone who dissents from establishment orthodoxy, whether from the right or the left. But it does actually have meaning. There are real Nazis. There is such a thing as Nazi ideology, and these are the real adherents to it. And the only problem, according to the New York Times and their partners at Bellingcat, is that it creates bad PR for Ukraine. It's important to keep good PR from Ukraine so we can keep weaponizing them and funding them. So far, the New York Times says, the imagery has not eroded international support for the war. Why not? Why hasn't this imagery of what the New York Times describes as regular or frequent invocation of Nazi ideology and Nazi symbols by the Ukrainian military, why hasn't that eroded international support for the war?
Exactly. It should. It absolutely should. Aside from the fact that, you know, if look, if escalating with Russia and risking nuclear war with Russia is not good enough for you, you know, is not good enough reason for you to, you know, to want to stop arming Ukraine, well, then perhaps you would consider the fact that many, not all, but many, a considerable, sizable amount of the Ukrainian armed forces have Nazis and Nazi Banderite adherents in their ranks. Perhaps that should convince you. No, apparently it doesn't work in the West. And if you mention the truth, it's Russian propaganda. Okay, I see how this works. In any case, what happened in the Canadian Parliament is very disgusting, and you should know about it and tell people, because this is disgusting. I mean, it's not like they brought a skinhead and applauded him. No. They got you a vanilla, right? A vanilla original Nazi from the World War II, just to really, like, you know, drive the point home. And then the apology. Yeah, you know, the apology is the best part, isn't it? Don't pay any attention to what we just did, because it's Russian propaganda, I assure you. Thank you, gentlemen. Good night. My goodness. They are scandalous. We've got about 700 people watching, but only 560 likes, so please make sure you've hit the like button. YouTube is slow on refreshing the stats, so I might be a little off, but please make sure you've hit the like button. And again, thank you to everyone who's supporting the show. Give me a second over here. We've got a donation on Cash App. This is from, it's loading. It's from Judy. Thank you very much, Judy. It says for love. Well, I appreciate that. And we have one from France as well on Cash App. It says for Vive l'Afrique et la Syrie, merci Richie. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, France. And we also had someone join on Patreon. I just got a notification. John, thank you very much, John. And we have Jamie as well, who joined earlier today before the live stream. And nevertheless, please give them a warm thank you. And we'll play them a crab dance tout de suite.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard. Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line. Claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome.
Thank you.
والله في كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro.
And then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large.
we got him.
Because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Disgusting!
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Why attack Sanders? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Brilliant. Okay, so guys, I want to show you some first-class hypocrisy right now. I want to go into another segment here. This is from Greenfeld, right? So let me break this down for you. So a few days ago, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Greenwald, Linda Thomas Greenwald, she was giving a press conference, and she gets asked a very uncomfortable question, of course. She gets asked about the Golan Heights. Okay, so the Golan Heights are part of Syria. Israel has been occupying them since 1967. Israel annexed them in 1980 and 81. It also annexed Jerusalem alongside. And the UN at the time, and even the United States, right? The whole UN Security Council said this is illegal. You need to give back the territory, and you can't do this, right? And so ever since, the Israelis, they've been violating Resolution 242 and 497. And I want to show you what she says about the Golan Heights, right? So remember, this is the Donald Trump's administration, who then in 2019 say, actually, you know what? The Golan Heights, they're not Syrian anymore. They're Israeli. Jerusalem is not Palestinian or corpus separatum or a separate body. It's Israeli. So she gets asked, right? What does she have to say?
Our policy on the Golan Heights has not changed. This vote did not signal any change in that policy, and our decision in 2019 remains in effect. And I can't say that more clearly than that.
Our decision, meaning her and Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, Donald Trump. Yeah. So you see, when we say there's no difference between Trump and Biden, this is exactly what I mean. This is exactly what I mean. And I told you this before Biden got elected. I told you that the foreign policy would be copy and paste, a continuation, and it has been the case for every theater that you can think of, in every domain and in every field. So shameless. Like, at the same time that she's saying, oh, it's illegal for the Russians to occupy the Donbass, it's illegal for the Russians to go into Ukraine, they're violating Ukraine's territory, they're violating Ukraine's territorial integrity, Ukraine's sovereignty, international law. Then she has the nerve to say that, oh, actually, you know, we maintain the Trump position that the occupied Syrian Golan Heights are Israeli. What a scandalous person. What an absolutely scandalous person. So, just as a reminder, here's Blinken. On Wolf Blitzer.
As a practical matter, the Golan is very important to Israel's security as long as Assad is in power in Syria, as long as Iran is present in Syria, militia groups backed by Iran, the Assad regime itself. All of these pose a significant security threat to Israel, and as a practical matter, the control of the Golan in that situation, I think, remains of real importance to Israel's security. Legal questions are something else, and over time, if the situation were to change in Syria, that's something we look at, but we are nowhere near as that in time.
The Trump administration, as you know, also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which Israel captured from Syria back in 1967. Will your administration, the Biden administration, continue to see the Golan Heights as part of Israel?
Look, leaving aside the legalities of that question.
So he starts the response and ends the response with legalities aside. International law aside, right? Who cares? No, the whole issue is international law. What do you mean? You're the Secretary of State. You're the Foreign Minister. What do you mean legalities aside? Yeah, they mean legalities aside. So when Russia does something like holding referendums in the Donbass or in Zaporizhia and Kherson, yeah, legalities aside. Who gives a crap, right? Legalities aside. Legalities aside. I'm going to play this clip from Lavrov. This is the Russian foreign minister. And take a look at what he had to say. This is 2 days ago. He's also giving a press conference at the UN.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. This is yeah.
Please.
Thank you.
And you will be next.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Mr. Minister. This is Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. I've been asking you a similar question every time we meet about Palestine. But this time I have two parts of my question. A few days ago, the ambassador of the U.S. stood here, she talked about the priority of the U.S. about upholding international law of the U.S. She spoke about the priorities of the U.S. upholding the international law and the UN Charter. And the same press conference, she was asked about the Golan Heights, and she repeated that the country is still upholding that resolution of 2019, recognizing the Golan Heights as part of Israel.
That's the clip I played for you at the beginning of the segment.
So I want you to comment on this double standard. And continuing double standard, every time I ask about the right of the Palestinians to defend themselves, similar to other people who fell under colonialism and foreign domination, then they start talking about two-state solution, and the SG spoke about the example of Gandhi. He wants the Palestinian to follow the example of Gandhi, who has 450 million behind him, not like the Palestinian whose backs are against the wall. Do the Palestinian people have the right to resist their occupation and foreign domination by Israel? Thank you very much.
On the Palestinian issue, we have resolutions from both the Security Council and the General Assembly of the UN, and we stand for everyone to be guided by these resolutions. When it comes to your first question, I will read out this text and we'll continue after.
The Donbass is very important to Russia's security. As long as Zelensky is in power in Ukraine, as long as NATO is present in Ukraine, militia groups backed by NATO, the Zelensky regime itself, all of this pose a significant security threat to Russia, and as a practical matter, the control of the Donbass in that.
So you see what he's doing? He's making fun of Blinken. He's reading this. He's taking what Blinken said in this exact interview and changing it, right? Instead of as long as Iran remain and Hezbollah remain in Syria, he's saying as long as NATO proxy groups remain inside Ukraine. So he's taking the exact same logic used by the State Department, used by Blinken, used by Kirby, used by Greenwald to justify illegally occupying Syria, to justify Israel illegally occupying the Golan Heights, and then using it for Donbass, because why the hell not? Haven't the Americans done this for decades? Whenever they feel like they carve up this country, you know, have a referendum in Kosovo, why not? You know, you can have a piece of Syria, Israel can have one piece, we'll have one piece. Yeah, why not? Everybody can do what they want, right? Because international law doesn't mean anything.
That situation, I think, remains of real importance to Russia's security.
Let me play them side by side, okay? Let me play them side by side. Okay, let me do them side by side. Here's the Blinken one.
Of that question, as a practical matter, the Golan is very important to Israel's security as long as Assad is in power in Syria.
Blinken, an interview to Wolf Blitzer, 8 of February 2022, he was asked about the Golan Heights.
The legalities of that question. He started with leaving aside the legalities. As a practical matter, the Golan is very important to Israel's security as long as Assad is in power in Ukraine, in Syria, as long as Iran is.
No, that's funny, honestly.
As long as Iran is present in Syria, militia groups backed by Iran.
Yeah, so he's talking about the PMU when he says that, right? So the Hashd al-Sha'bi, which is the Popular Mobilization Forces or Popular Mobilization Units, who again, just like Iran, they also have the right to be in Syria and operate in Syria because they're the ones who are actually fighting ISIS. They're the ones who are actually keeping the Americans who are at bay as they're stealing the oil, right?
As long as Zelensky is in power in Ukraine, as long as NATO is present in Ukraine, militia groups backed by NATO, the Zelensky regime itself, all of this pose a significant
the Assad regime itself, all of these pose a significant security threat to Israel, and as a practical matter, the control of the Golan in that situation.
Security threat to Russia, and as a practical matter, the control of the Donbass in that situation, I think, remains of real importance to Russia's security. Legal questions are something else.
I think remains of real importance to Israel's security. Legal questions are something else. And
I think we'll leave it at that. You understand what's going on, and it's so funny. Here's Kirby, by the way, in case you missed it.
I was struck by something the president said today about ensuring that neighbors cannot steal other neighbors' territory. It's something you all have brought up many, many times. And I'm curious if you can kind of help us understand why the administration has not changed course on your predecessor, former President Donald Trump's position on the Golan Heights, and what makes that situation distinct from what's going on in Russia and Ukraine.
Look, the different scenarios completely, and I'm not here prepared to talk much about that, except to say we've been very consistent that we want to see a two-state solution, and we believe, the president believes, that a two-state solution is possible and could be viable. But it takes both sides to be willing to commit to that, and we don't want to see either side take unilateral actions that would decrease the possibility of actually reaching a two-state solution.
Again, legalities aside, Israel can do what they want in Palestine. They can do what they want in Syria. Legalities aside, legalities aside. I'll close with Lavrov's comment at the UN. So, like I said, they've been doing the UNGA, the General Assembly speeches all week. He represented Russia. Usually, sometimes you have a head of state, sometimes you'll have the foreign minister. It doesn't matter. So he came instead of Putin. I think maybe just to keep in, because the Americans, I can't imagine they would dare arrest Putin in New York at the UN. No. Even they wouldn't dare something like that. And the U.S. is not part of the ICC anyway. So, pertaining to that whole issue with South Africa and why didn't Putin go and why Lavrov went in his stead, that was just to avoid that's a whole different situation, because, like I said, South Africa is part of the ICC. They have a precedent when it comes to Omar Bashir, who is the president of Sudan. It's a whole different issue. But he came in and spoke for Russia this week, and listen to what he had to say.
And it has long been to reject the principle of equality and their total inability to reach agreement. Being used to looking down at the rest of the world, Americans and Europeans make all sorts of promises, and they take on commitments inter alia, written ones and legally binding ones, and then they just don't fulfill them. As President Putin pointed out, the West is one that is truly an empire of lies. Russia, like many countries, knows about this firsthand. In 1945, when we, along with Washington and London, together were vanquishing the enemy on the front in the Second World War, our allies in the anti-Hitler coalition were already making plans for a unthinkable military operation. That's what it was called, against the Soviet Union. 4 years later, in 1949.
That's true. In World War II, they were already planning to attack the Soviets, and Churchill more than happy.
The Americans drafted a drop shot operation to make mass-scale nuclear strikes on the USSR. These ghastly, senseless ideas did remain on paper. The USSR created its own weaponized retaliation. It took the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the world was on the brink of nuclear war, for the idea of deploying it, and the illusion of victory stopped being the basis of the military planning strategy of the US.
An empire of lies. That's what he said. Yeah. I mean, it's a play on what Reagan said, right? So Reagan said the Soviet Union is an empire of evil. Well, today the slogan is that the West is an empire of lies. Regrettably, it's true. Regrettably. Let me show you something that I don't think many of you will have picked up on, because they didn't show this part before. So okay, I commented already on this interview with MBS, right? So in the interview that MBS gave to Fox News, there's a part where he's asked about nuclear weapons, right? Because they're talking about the normalization of ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And then, of course, you know, the mainstream media, and especially Fox News, are incapable of saying the word Iran without physically, you know, having to say nuclear afterwards. So anyway, here's what they said.
Look to that. Are you concerned, though, Iran gets a nuclear weapon, about them getting a nuclear weapon?
Please, for the love of God, I beg you, stop saying that Iran is building a nuclear weapon. I beg you. I wish they were. I wish. Just so you could stop talking about it. Iran is the last country on earth that's building a nuclear weapon, because the IAEA have cameras in there 24/7. Well, they did until very, very, very recently with the inspectors as well, because the United States quit the nuclear deal, right? So that's their fault. You want to complain about this, then you can go blame the United States, who refuses to re-enter the nuclear deal and honor their word and their commitments. But in any case, I will let him answer.
We are concerned of any country getting a nuclear weapon. That's a bad move, and you don't need to get a nuclear weapon because you cannot use it. Even if Iran gets a nuclear weapon.
Did you see the guy's face? He's like, but why don't you want a nuclear weapon? No, I'm joking. He's a very, honestly, he did a very good job at this interview. I'm giving him a bit too much crap right now, but I said last time, the interviewer is very good. He conducted the whole thing excellently.
If a country use a nuclear weapon, that means they are having a war with the rest of the world. The world cannot see another Hiroshima. If the world see 100,000 people dead, that means you are in a war with the rest of the world. So it's a useless effort to reach a nuclear weapon, because you cannot use it. If you use it, you got to have a big fight with the rest of the world.
If they get one, will you?
If they get one, we have to get one for security reasons, for balancing power in the Middle East. But we don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. So if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Saudi Arabia has to get a nuclear weapon for balance of power in the Middle East. Okay. Well, Israel has nuclear weapons, so why don't you want one? Isn't that weird? Israel has nuclear weapons and Saudi Arabia is fine with that? No, balance of power in the Middle East, it's not a thing. Iran is the problem. See, this is the whole thing, that the Saudis, they normalized ties with Iran, with Syria, with Yemen in one go, and that was very good, and I applauded them for that, and I said this is the right thing to do, and I congratulated the Chinese for helping mediate the whole thing. Right? And Iraq as well. We should not forget Iraq also. That Iraq is where the meetings took place. Right? But nevertheless, don't you find this weird? Don't you find this odd? That he says, if Iran gets one, then we will get one. But, you know, Israel already has the nuclear weapons. Why don't you want one as well? Why don't you want one of your own? You don't feel that there's a need for balance of power, especially with Israel? Israel that is occupying Syria, that is occupying Palestine, and, well, has occupied Lebanon many times, still is technically in Shabbat farms. What about that? You know, everything that Israel has done. Is there one country in the vicinity that Israel has not attacked? Is there? I'm unaware. I think Saudi Arabia, I would like to say ideally has a lot more in common with Iran than Israel, but actually politically, in reality, it's the opposite. I told you Saudi Arabia is basically an Arab Israel. Think of it that way. Not that most people in the country in Saudi Arabia feel that way. They don't. They would agree with what I'm saying. But the government, you can think of them as an Arab Israel, which is an oxymoron. But yeah, nevertheless, it's true. You know, Saudi Arabia are basically the Arab, attack dog of the United States. Now with BRICS, having acceded to BRICS, Saudi Arabia, doing deals now with China, and the global South that go counter, that go against the interests of the United States. It doesn't mean that all the things that we just mentioned of how common their politics are with Israel and the United States change, or rather disappear, because this is true. This happened. And right now you can see MBS and Netanyahu openly saying that, yeah, normalization is in the cards. It's a question of time. It's a question of time, they say. So this makes you question why. And of course, we can see that while Saudi Arabia is basically looking out for its own interests. Saudi Arabia is hedging, basically placing its bets on both sides and saying that, if BRICS succeeds, well, we're part of BRICS now, so we're good. We'll be set. And if it doesn't, because there's going to be a counter to that, there's going to be a competitor basically an economic pipeline that not only competes with BRICS but tries to sabotage BRICS and the New Silk Road, especially in particular, then they'll also be set, right? Because you'll have it going from India through the UAE, through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, and into Israel, and then onwards to Europe. Saudi Arabia gets to win both ways, right? Saudi Arabia wins either way. So that's what they're doing. They're looking out for their own interests. But I think that's a selfish thing to do, especially when Saudi Arabia says, well, we care about the Palestinians. Or at least they pretend to care. Did you consult the Palestinians before you said you're going to normalize with the Israelis? What did they say? What are you going to do? You're going to give them a few pennies? Because that's what they said. They were going to give them this aid that was cut off. So what? You can't put a price on the betrayal of normalizing ties with Israel. What is Israel going to give the Palestinians? Who is Israel to give the Palestinians anything in the first place? Why should the Palestinians have to, get something from Israel? Who is Israel? They're an occupier. Again, going back to Iran, you can see that there is a sliver of tension here that has not evaporated, that is still there. So despite normalizing ties with Iran and everything being cool, apparently they're still worried about a nuclear Iran, which is ridiculous, right? Iran could if Iran wanted to build a bomb, they would already do it. They can do it. They could have done it already years ago. Look, they can enrich uranium at 60%, right? The jump from 3.67%, which was the limit in the deal, to 60 is, God, it's so much more difficult than jumping from 60 to 90. But then, of course, you have to do all the other tests involved in making a weapon, which, everyone would know about it. Everyone in the world would know about this. You could not hide it. You could never hide it. Not just in Iran, but just in general. You cannot build a nuclear bomb without someone finding out about it. It's just impossible today. Nevertheless, they use this as some sort of excuse. Israel is the one that is really scared of Iran having a nuclear weapon. That is true balance of power in the Middle East. But the thing is, Iran doesn't need a nuclear weapon because Iran uses asymmetrical warfare. They don't need a nuclear weapon. Hezbollah said many times, if we want a nuclear weapon, we just have to fire at Dimona, which is the facility that the Israelis use. And you had this a few years ago, so 2 years ago, when the Israelis were bombing Syria. There's an errant SAM, a surface-to-air missile, that was chasing one of the Israeli jets, and it landed like 30 kilometers next to Dimona. So imagine just this thing having traveled hundreds of kilometers. It just had to go a little bit further to 30 kilometers, which is nothing for a SAM. And it would have caused, a Chernobyl or something like that, right? Something of that nature. So, yeah, Hezbollah are not joking when they say that. They could make that. If they want, obviously this is lunacy because it would destroy the whole region, right? So the winds, it would kill people all over the place. No one wants that, but they're saying if we want one, if it comes to that, we can just do this. We don't need that. Iran, they keep complaining about Iran supporting all these groups like Hashd al-Shabi or the PMU in Iraq or Yemen or Syria or Hezbollah. This is Iran's strength. It doesn't mean Iran controls them. It just means Iran is there to support them. Iran is there to give them the tools that they need to liberate themselves from Israeli colonialism, from American imperialism. And it works. It works. This is why they killed Soleimani. Because Because they're so losers. Because they can't stand the fact that this guy does his job well. He helps defend the region from colonizers. You know? And then they say that he's the terrorist. No. The Israelis are the terrorists. It's a not a shame. It's even worse than that. You know, this normalization of ties between Saudi and Israel that is impending. Like, they still haven't, you know, taken it off of their minds. I fear this, and I told you after the Trump Abrams Accords that the Saudis are next. You can go and look at the videos. I said the Saudis are next. Well, good to know that they fear Iran. Apparently they fear Iran going nuclear, but not Israel, who already has nuclear weapons and treats Arabs and Palestinians and Syrians like crap. Saudi Arabia has changed very, very much in the last decades. What a shame. Thank you very much for the super chat. Iga RVB, I appreciate that very much. And we also had another super chat over here from, it's loading. It was from Socialists with Tanky Characteristics. Said, sending Australian dollars is embarrassing. I'm only half from here. Australia isn't a country anyway. Love your work. Nuke Pine Gap. Oh, man. Pine Gap is the American spy base in Australia. Not a bad proposal, but, I think generally speaking, we should we should maybe leave the nukes for another day. No, but I appreciate the funny message. It's good. Australia is just, a British prison colony, remember? Marvin says, Holocaust franchise used by ADL damaged. Where's ADL? This is something that I wanted to point out earlier, which I'm grateful you reminded me, which you reminded me of. When it comes to the Canadians applauding this disgusting Nazi, this Ukrainian Nazi, in Parliament, where are the groups like the ADL? Where are they? Now, again, don't get me wrong. You have other groups that have been, complaining about this in Canada, like that memorial I just showed you, for years now, since before this war in Ukraine erupted in 2022, right? But nevertheless, yesterday, the mainstream media, not a bloody word about this. Nothing. Now you'll find it. Now. But in the last, 16 hours, there was nothing. There was nothing at all. And then only suddenly at the end, after people on Twitter have to do their work for them, then they spring into action and say, oh, okay, yeah, there was a Nazi there, turns out. You didn't take issue with that before? Even the way they reported on it, they didn't even know that this guy's a Nazi. Like, this is their level of journalism. This is how disgusting and shameful they are. And so, God, you should hear the commentary. Honestly, you should hear the commentary. I'm going to put in the video so you can hear how they were talking about it. Like, yeah, it was. There just happened to be a guy who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians in World War II. What do you mean you fought against the Russians? Anyone fighting against the Russians in World War II, again, alarm bells should be going off in your head. Alarm bells. Here, let me see if I can find that clip. This is from the AP. Okay, look at what they were saying. And the clip where they announced this was also from the AP, okay? But the image caption.
This is the island of Sindala, the first project.
Here, look at that. It says, so Ukrainian President Zelensky and Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau recognized Hunka, who was in attendance and fought with the 1st Ukrainian Division in World War II before later immigrating to Canada. You mean a Nazi who ran away from Europe to Canada, just like those Ukrainians and Germans that emigrated to Argentina, huh? Like, this is their level of journalism. Look at that. It doesn't mention anywhere that this guy was in the 14th Division of the Waffen-SS, that he's a Nazi, that Justin Trudeau and Volodymyr Zelensky are applauding an actual Nazi. Nothing. That's the caption from the Associated Press. That's their level of journalism. How deceitful and just low. And the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which really should just be called the Defamation League, you know, they're a group that pretend to care about fighting anti-Semitism, but what they do is actually they go and attack anyone who criticizes Zionism, which is a disgusting, racist, Jewish supremacist political ideology from Europe that justifies colonizing Palestine and calling it Israel. The ADL just go and attack people who are critics of Zionism, who criticize Israel, and then try to paint them as anti-Semites. They are actually the real anti-Semites who go to Palestine and kill Semitic people, who kill Palestinians, and then take their land and pretend that they're natives. They did not say a word about this episode, this whole episode. I looked on their Twitter, not one thing, no statement about Canada's parliament applauding a Nazi. What happened to fighting anti-Semites? What happened to fighting people like that? No, nothing, because it doesn't fit the propaganda, right? It's Russian propaganda if you say the truth, huh? But it's Western propaganda if you say nothing. It really is. It really is. Just look at that. Shameful, shameful, shameful. Thank you guys again for all the super chats and for supporting my work. Again, if you like what I do and you want to support independent journalism, please consider donating on Patreon. You can do $1 a month or $10 a month or 10 euros a month. And I'm trying to get to 750. We're at 711 right now. So we've got almost 1,000 people watching. If there are 49 people among you, even just a few of you, if we can advance the goal, we'd be set, you know, we'd be good. So let's try and get up on the Biden sniffinometer. Let's try and get towards 750. I'd really appreciate it. And I'm counting on you guys to get it done. I know that we can hit this monthly goal, so please help me in that endeavor. And again, for all of you who donated on YouTube or on CashApp or PayPal or whatever it is, or even Bitcoin, there's a multitude of ways that you can support my show and support my work. I'm most grateful, and I thank you guys for your comments and your kind words of encouragement. And so I'll be waiting to see if we get any new people on Patreon so I can give you guys a crab dance. And for now, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it very much. Take care. Ma'as-salame. Bye-bye. So you have another terrorist attack in Ukraine. This time it's the Kakhovka Dam. And the first thing the media do is blame the Russians. So let's see why the Russians would do it. They control the dam. They control the region. They need the dam to funnel water to Crimea, which is also under Russian control. They literally have zero motive. There is no motive. You know, the Washington Post in December published an article showing how Ukraine targeted this dam using American missiles, using the HIMARS system. They actually fired a missile at this dam to test if they could flood areas. Sound familiar? This is the same thing that we saw with the Nord Stream pipeline attacks, right? The first thing the press do is let's go and blame Russia. And now, almost a year later, the Washington Post finally admits that Ukraine, not Russia, Ukraine blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. This is something that I, myself, and others have been saying since the very beginning. Anyone with half a brain knew that it was not Russia. Russia would not blow up their own pipeline. But, you know, this was dismissed as a crackpot conspiracy theory that NATO would maybe do this or Ukraine. No, that's Russian propaganda. And another example, the Nazi patches. This week, the New York Times also finally admit that Ukrainian soldiers en masse are wearing Nazi patches to the point that Western journalists have to ask them to hide the patches before they take photos of them. I mean, this is despicable on another level. And then later they claim that these are authentic photos. This is not journalism. This is curated propaganda. So are the New York Times and Washington Post doing propaganda now, right? They're doing Russian disinformation. These people are not doing journalism, all right? You guys are a year late. Only publishing the truth when nobody cares anymore, that's not journalism, okay? They are the ones doing disinformation. They are the ones doing propaganda. And these acts of state terrorism, blowing up pipelines and dams, European leaders say literally absolutely nothing. And all they do is give more money and more weapons to an army where men are wearing Nazi patches and blowing up our infrastructure. So what's the conclusion? Always ask yourself, who stands to gain? Whether we're talking about the Crimea Bridge, Nord Stream pipelines, or the Kakhovka Dam like today, always ask yourself who stands to benefit, and you'll find the answer, you'll find the truth. So everyone's talking about how Donald Trump has been indicted under the Espionage Act. But what a lot of people don't understand is that the Espionage Act is a law that has always been used in the United States as a political tool to silence opponents. It was crafted in 1917, so during World War I, and one of its most famous victims was Eugene Debs. He was given 10 years in prison and stripped of his citizenship because he gave an anti-war speech. Ellsberg, Manning, Kiriakos, Snowden, they were all charged under the Espionage Act as well, and none afforded a public interest defense. Yet another reason why the Espionage Act is a political tool to silence whistleblowers, quite literally, even in court. Even worse, it's also being used to threaten Julian Assange, a publisher, with almost 200 years in prison. So many people are upset about Trump putting classified documents in the bathroom. I wonder if they care just as much about freedom of speech and press freedoms. Trump definitely put America's national security at risk, not for bringing home documents, but assassinating Soleimani, the equivalent of Iran's defense minister. How come Trump's critics never attack him for actual crimes, like putting illegal sanctions on millions of people or stealing oil from Syria?
We're keeping the oil. We have the oil. The oil is secure. We left troops behind only for the oil.
If you love Ukraine, if you care about Ukraine, depleted uranium is the last thing in the world that you would tell them to use. If you look at what the United States have done, everywhere they've used depleted uranium, it's like dropping a nuclear bomb, and actually worse in other ways. Just to give you an example, in Fallujah in Iraq, guess what? 10, 20 years later, there are people in Fallujah who are being born with cancer. And it's so bad that you have higher rates of birth defects and congenital heart disease in Fallujah than you do in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. In Nagasaki and Hiroshima, you knew that there was a nuclear explosion and you had to get the hell away from there if you could. The thing is, the people in Iraq didn't know what the Americans had put in the tank shells. They dropped so much white phosphorus, they used so much depleted uranium. The people living there have no clue about this. The war is bad enough without knowing that, if you live there and you stay there, you're going to get cancer, and your kids are going to be born with these massive nightmarish birth defects. And now they want to bring this literally cancerous thing, depleted uranium, and use it in Ukraine. If you love Ukraine, if you care about Ukraine, depleted uranium is the last thing in the world that you would tell them to use, because guess who's going to suffer from that? The people in Ukraine, right? Like, if their idea is to liberate Ukraine, right? Okay, let's say that they do. Tomorrow morning, Zelensky's gonna emerge victorious over the Donbass and Crimea, and he's gonna go have a nice parade, right? Guess what? All the people returning to their homes, or all the people living there, you're gonna give those people in Ukraine cancer because you use depleted uranium, because this stuff goes in the earth. It seeps into the earth, into the soil, into the water. It's actually worse than a nuke, truly, because people don't even know that it's there. They have no clue that they're living next to things that are going to give them cancer and destroy their DNA and give their children massive birth defects. They don't even know that it's there. It's like a silent killer. They don't care about you, man. They don't care about you. This is bad for the environment, obviously. That doesn't even need stating. And it's bad for human beings, and it's bad for wildlife, for everyone. But it's good for what? It's good if you manufacture it. It's very good. This is explosive. This is mind-blowing. How do we know that it's the Ukrainians who haven't held up their end of the deal, but the Russians have? The deal was that the Russians will pull out of Kiev. At the time, the media that we have here in the West, they were saying, oh, the Russians have failed. Their army sucks. That's actually not at all what happened. The Russians pulled back on purpose and left the capital. They left Kiev because of this peace agreement. Boris Johnson was the prime minister at the time, and he just randomly happens to go and visit Zelensky, and he tells Zelensky, drop out of the peace negotiations, drop out. Zelensky did what Boris Johnson told him to do. Angela Merkel, who is the German chancellor, she says that in the end, the Minsk agreement, it was just a ruse in order to buy time for NATO to arm Ukraine. This means that once again, you cannot take Western leaders and diplomats seriously. The Russians are done talking. This is the conclusion that I draw from this, because they have had it up to here with Ukraine and their backers and guarantors, you know, just playing games with them. So just remember the next time that the media tell you that the Russians walked away from peace talks, that this is a lie. And when they tell you the next time that Russia wanted this war, that this is a lie. Just remember these things.
Some in Iran wanted Iran to go to war with the Taliban. And actually, they were liberals. They were the pro-Western liberals who were saying that we should, you know, go to the defense of the Tajiks, or Persian speakers, the Hazaras, who are predominantly Shia, and the Uzbeks and others. They together are more than 50%. Taliban is basically Pashtun. They are 40%, roughly 40% of the country. It's sort of ironic because the people who are calling for Iran to wage war against the Taliban, they were totally against the Russians in Ukraine. Their logic is not dissimilar to the logic of the Russians. These people were saying we should go to the support of the Persian speakers. Why not the Russians support Russian speakers? But yeah, that hypocrisy is aside. The Iranian government said, look, we have to keep Afghanistan peaceful, and it's had enough war.
South Africa, China, Brazil, all these countries that are BRICS countries. So you know, they are partners with Russia. They're not condoning Russia. They're actually saying, hey, everybody calm down and let's resolve this. And all you see is media attacking them. They attacked South Africa for proposing diplomacy. They attack Lula for trying to sit down Zelensky. Zelensky makes him wait and then doesn't even show up to the meeting. I mean, how insulting in any context, right? Never mind a goddamn president of the largest country in Latin America. So they try to like attack the countries closest to Russia for actually suggesting peace. Maybe South Africa should give some F-16s instead of being a Putin puppet, right? Maybe China should send some F-16s instead of being a Kremlin asset.